Welcome back, Secrets of the Sire, live on talkingalternative.com. You can download our podcast. The show is on every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on talkingalternative.com. You click on the browser, enter that into the URL, and you can find us. A lot of great shows on the station. In fact, too, want to give some love to 21st Century Entrepreneur. Comes on after us, JC and Joan. And then on every Monday, you just go into iTunes, Secrets of the Sire, and you can download the podcast in case you missed the live broadcast. We're with Jeff Gomez from Starlight Runner Entertainment, a transmedia company. So, Jeff, we've mentioned before, you've worked. Your company has worked on the franchises Amazing Spider-Man, Men in Black, Avatar. What role did you guys play, and how is it connected to shared universes?
Well, as I started to work in the entertainment business, I started at Valiant Comics, and it got acquired by Acclaim Entertainment, which was a video game company. I knew games, game theory, and the development of games for me was the closest thing to being able to create these universes that I loved so much, and so. In the 90s, I worked on Turok Dinosaur Hunter, a Nintendo 64 game, and helped to build out that world. It was very successful. And then Magic the Gathering, which was really a pivotal point in my career, because I suggested to the people who owned Magic the Gathering and to the Acclaim Entertainment people that there was I believe that there was a formula, a basis by which a shared universe could be developed from scratch that could operate on different media at the same time. And with the advent of the internet, this would be really something that could take off, because it added the component of an interaction with fans, so that the fan's voice could be heard while the shared universe was being built. Of course, everyone said, we don't have any idea what you're talking about, and this had better be free to build. Sure. And I got interns at Valiant to help me build this stuff, and one of your listeners, Hassan Godwin, helped me to build the Magic websites and stuff like that.
Interesting note about Hassan. Hassan was the bass player in my band, which is the music you hear on Secrets of the Sire.
Cow.
Hassan is a killer bassist, by the way. He is amazing. So
that's fantastic.
Continue.
Well, it worked. And not only did it work like super well and kind of put me up a few pay rates, but I left Acclaim with the understanding that this is something that you can do. Yeah. And I formed Starlight Runner Entertainment in order to basically to do it, to apply a methodology to the creation of story worlds, or the extension of story worlds. And Mattel, Hot Wheels, came to us and said, okay, smart guy, do it with these toys. And we built a fantasy universe. Fabian Nicieza and I got together. Deadpool writer.
That's what he's known now as,
Fabian
right?
works for Starlight Runner, so I get to watch him open his Deadpool envelopes. And we built this fabulous universe, and it made buckets of money for Mattel. And then the Walt Disney Company said, well, help us do that with Pirates of the Caribbean. This is a complicated world, and we need to know how to make it work on all these new media platforms.
So so you're handing them like a story Bible, saying this is what you can do with these characters. And for Mattel, you're actually creating from scratch the characters and the world that you're in. So,
that's right.
Okay,
that's right.
Terrific. Continue.
Yeah. So we became known in Hollywood for inventing these gigantic, we call them mythology books, where you're learning everything you possibly can about the story world, but also because I studied how these worlds were built
Yep.
in the first place. We have this way of getting at the essence. What is it that truly makes this brand distinct? What makes Spider-Man different from any other superhero character? What makes a Spider-Man story truly a Spider-Man story and not just another superhero story? When by deconstructing the mythology
Sure.
of the character and the character's world, we find those essential bits and show them to our client. And the client is usually actually quite surprised and delighted by this information, because you can now take that and make sure that it's in all of the different extensions of the world.
So you can make sure that we don't get an emo Spider-Man in a film franchise.
Yes.
The one movie that got left off our Spider-Man film franchise Final Four poll was the reviled Spider-Man 3. So, but I digress. Continue, please.
Well, to take that as an example, when you have a character or a world that is mythic, that you know is going to transcend our whole lives because of how powerful and potent they are. The first thing that my company does is it defends and protects the integrity of that. So it's great to have an artist come and interpret Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. But if the artist imposes their vision and their persona almost too much onto it,
Sure.
it becomes less about Spider-Man and more about the artist. And the audience can sense that. And the audience, if the audience senses that too much, the audience is going to go away.
A good example would be Tim Burton, then, how he was able to kind of balance that. You know, it's still a Tim Burton film, but it's a Batman film.
There you go.
You know,
He understood.
It never escaped that realm where you're sitting there saying, "I'm watching Edward Scissorhands here in a Batman costume."
And that's because Tim actually kind of understands the pain of the outsider, the pain of that level of loss, not just in Batman, but in the villains.
Yeah.
And you can feel that palpably in the Burton Batman films.
That makes total sense. So so we had mentioned Men in Black. I know you guys played a significant role in Men in Black 3. Can you maybe give us a little background on that?
Sure. We were brought to Sony Pictures by Walter Parks, who was the producer of the Men in Black films. He had they had an interesting question to pose to us, which is, when you think about Men in Black, you think about Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones,
Right?
And so the question is, this is a rich universe. But can it be a shared universe? Can the Men in Black story world proliferate across a number of media platforms without necessarily having to rely on J and K, those two characters? And the corollary question would be, well, we have Star Wars, but can there really be Star Wars without Luke Skywalker and Han Solo?
Right.
So we had to very closely examine the Men in Black universe. And what's interesting is that Sony had these vaults full of Men in Black stuff. There was an animated series that we didn't even remember that ran for like 4 or 5 years.
What?
There's like 100 episodes of Men in Black.
So now usually Sam is the one with his jaw dropped at some of our anecdotes. Now I am, actually, because I knew there was a cartoon, but I thought it was maybe like a pilot. And then
It
wow.
was actually pretty good and had its own continuity and things like that.
All right.
There were novels, there were video games. We got them all and examined every facet, every aspect of Men in Black. And it's actually a kind of unique concept.
Yeah.
It's a police procedural.
Yep.
There's a serious undertone to the Men in Black universe, to the concept that was the equivalent of the immigration experience in the United States and things like that. And there were all of these laws and clauses and ways that the Earth interrelated with the cosmos that actually is kind of beautiful as a conceit. And so our conclusion was you can do this. You
Yeah.
can proceed with or without any individual character. Nothing against Will Smith.
No,
Love
of
him.
course
but,
not, yeah.
But you can proceed, and Sony was really impressed with this. So our duties included that kind of cosmic mythology stuff, but also we had to sit down and figure out how time travel works
in the
Men in
context
Black
of that
3.
universe,
yes.
right?
And we had to think about what a video game could do to add and tell us more about Men in Black. We had to think about, there was an issue with toys, right? What is a cool Men in Black action figure? A dude in a suit, sunglasses? No. So what do we do?
Right.
We want more Men in Black toys. And we said, well, the Japanese Men in Black base, they have different outfits there, which are kind of cool because they're Japanese.
Right, right.
So now there are all kinds of variations of the Men in Black suit that make for better collectability and so forth. And, of course, the bases are located in the same places where there are great markets for Men in Black movies and things like that.
It's funny, too, you mentioned that, too. I mean, I'm working on a project I was mentioning to you on the way into the studio today with Talon Caldwell, and we had to pick apart, and actually, it's based on alternate reality, so we're actually trying to craft what is our belief in science and try to base it in science as to how alternate realities work. So there's so much depth that goes into these things that a lot of the general public don't even realize, that goes into these kind of films and movies that the writers, sometimes if they're lazy and they're not taking to task all this stuff, it creeps into the
Mike,
finished project.
We as a company, we're shocked and appalled by intellectual property, stuff that gets on TV or into movie theaters, where it's clear that they did not sit down and think those things through.
Yeah.
I mean, in this day and age, where you can get a geek by posting onto your Facebook page to explain how dimensions work,
right,
that you don't do that is it's a real problem. And even if your audience isn't entirely made of geeks, it's the geeks who are going to
they're going to pick you apart.
And if you don't have your stuff straight, they're going to be disappointed in you, and it does start to fall apart.
So the work with Men in Black was with Sony, and that ended up kind of leading into the Spider-Man franchises as well, too, or was it vice versa?
So exciting, yes. It was the fact that they were really pleased with our Men in Black work, and what happened is that Sony said, look, we'd like